Economic situation and causes for the revolts of Spanish colonies in America. At the beginning of the 19th century, Spain and Portugal dominated most of the American continent. This domination was distributed in four viceroyalties: Mexico or New Spain, Nueva Granada, Peru, and Rio de la Plata. There were three capitals: Guatemala, Venezuela, and Chile. Mexico was the most important one. It was rich in agricultural production, mostly mining and the precious metals. In Cuba there was sugar and cocoa in Venezuela. Causes of the revolts in colonies. Encomienda. During the Spanish colonial period, the economy was based on exploitation, both of the land and on Indian labor. The first Spanish settlers organized the encomienda system, by which Spaniards owned the land and the villagers in that land. In return for promises to convert the Indians to Christianity, the Spanish were allowed to use the land and the labor the way they wanted. This system quickly turned into something very close to slavery. Indians were paid with very low wages, in anything at all, to perform labor on the plantation in mines. The Spanish believed that their God-given duty was to convert the Indians, and that the European notion of eternal salvation was a reward great enough to justify any possible mistreatment in this life. The result was a race for control of people more than of land, and abuses were so widespread that they became normal. Social inequality. The Spanish children born in the colonies were called Creoles, to distinguish them from the peninsular ones born in Spain. The Spanish were the only ones who had the right for encomienda, or the right to high working position. The mestizos were discriminated; they could only work as artisans and have access to inferior jobs. Indians had no rights. Exploitation of land. The other aspect of the Spanish colonial economy was the exploitation of land. Gold had been always a draw of conquistadors and later Spanish settlers. The gold and jewels stored from the Aztecs were taken to Spain to support colonization ventures. At the first, gold was a primary mineral mined in the New World. In these various parts of the continent, conquering Indians were given quotas of gold that they had to bring to the Spaniards as rent.
In 1545, the Spanish demand for gold changed to silver, lots and lots of silver, more silver of the next 100 years than had existed in all Europe up to that time. Suddenly, the New World became very important for the economy of Spain, which used this to pay for many wars in Europe. The conditions for the Indian and eventually African slaves in the mines were terrible. By the 18th century, however, silver products were falling, meaning that the economy of Spanish America suffered as well. External causes: decadency of Spain and Portugal economy. At first, everything the Spanish needed in the New World was shipped from Spain: food, nails, weapons, paper, everything. Before 1600, the encomenderos and other Spaniards paid for all these trade goods with gold and silver. After 1600, things began to change. A critical mass of Spaniards meant that the major population centers of Mexico City, Lima, and Veracruz began to produce some of these items for themselves. But the crown, in other words, Spain, didn't like this. Spain wanted to keep these colonies under their control. So the making of paper was prohibited in the New World. This was a problem since the Spanish government depended on paper. The Spanish economy suffered as the trade imbalance grew with the New World. In other words, since Mexico and Peru began producing clothing and other goods for themselves, there was a little demand for Spanish products, and Spanish Americans couldn't finance the purchase of all that silver. The slave economy. Spain brought a lot of Africans to work on the mines and sugar plantations. This solved a trade imbalance by giving the Spanish Americans something to sell in return for the gold, silver, and sugar produced in the New World. The losers here, as usual, were the Indians and the African slaves. Napoleonic invasion. French troops sent by Napoleon Bonaparte over the Iberian Peninsula provoked the defeat of the monarchs in Spain and Portugal in the year 1808. In 1810 started the revolt of Spanish colonies in Central and South America. In the main cities started the revolts which replaced the colonial rulers by governing boards. To conclude, all the colonies were tired of the mistreatment and the cruelty of the crown, so they decided to rebel against them. And these were the dates they rebelled: Venezuela and Peru, 1811, Argentina, 1812, Chile, 1817, Colombia and Ecuador, 1822, Bolivia 1824, and finally Uruguay 1828.